I'm Manya Brachear Pashman, co-host of AJC's weekly podcast, People of the Pod, here to moderate another historic announcement from the AJC Global Forum stage. With us to discuss is Senator Cory Booker of New Jersey, Senator Jacky Rosen of Nevada, and Senator Tim Scott of South Carolina. Senators, welcome.
Thank you. It's good to be with you.
Thank you very, very much.
So, reinvigorating the Black-Jewish alliance that was at the bedrock of the civil rights movement. And it's key to combating racism, rising anti-Semitism, both here in America and around the world. And that's why today's announcement is so critical. The three of you have joined us here on the Global Forum stage to announce the first ever Senate Caucus on Black-Jewish relations. Could you share with our audience, please, each of you, what you hope to accomplish through this caucus?
I would suggest the wisdom, Tim, of you and I yielding to Jacky first.
Sounds good.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. And I want to tell you that I'm so proud to be here with Tim and Cory, because when I went and talked to them about this idea, there wasn't a hesitation for a second. And I'm just so excited to do this, the first time it's ever happened in the Senate. And I just know that we are going to have so many good conversations, positive things going forward, and we're going to show real leadership in this issue. And just very excited to announce this.
So, Senators, why didn't you hesitate?
Cory, or you want me to go first?
Go ahead, Tim.
Yeah, I mean, for me, it's been a lifelong journey in many ways, understanding and appreciating the parallel tracks that the Jewish community and the Black community have been on. If you think about it from a biblical perspective, 4 centuries of slavery in Egypt, and you think about the 4 centuries the African Americans were enslaved, there are tracks that are parallel, and pain that creates promise and opportunity, the tragedies that became triumphs. It's a story that continues on, and for my life, for me, it seems it's just personal in that some of my first mentors, Larry Freudenberg, who helped me become a part of his insurance agency, and that gave me a piece of the pie and taught me not to work for someone, but work for yourself always. Or Jerry Zucker, whose family became billionaires. He was one of my first guys who sat down with me when I wanted to go in the restaurant business and said, I'm not sure that's a good idea. Thank God he did, by the way, because I went into the insurance business and did very well there. So my first chief of staff was an observant Jew. My consultant is still an observant Jew. So really, my relationship has spanned 40 plus years. And this is an opportunity for us to weigh in on critical issues that face our nation and do it together. And thank you, Jacky, for your wisdom and the friendship and the leadership that you're showing on behalf of not just the United States Senate, but on behalf of the nation, bringing all of us together.
Thank you.
And I'll just say, first of all, that I'll start where Tim ended there. Just God bless Jacky for being the principal provocateur for creating this historic first ever caucus. I'll be frank, it was very hard to have a Black Jewish caucus in the past because really weren't any Blacks serving in the Senate. I'm the 4th elected Black senator in the history, but Tim was here first. He was appointed, then he won. And when Tim won, that became the first time in American history that 2 Black elected senators were serving at the same time. And what I will say about Tim, he's sort of a modest person. He was very clear about his past, but what he really struck me as somebody when he got to the Senate is he became a champion of issues surrounding Israel. And when he and I saw a bit of issues going on in the foreign policy world, he and I made a determination that to show a Black commitment to the state of Israel, he and I did something that had never been done before. The 2 Black members of the Senate went out to Israel, took tours of the nation, met with the leadership and more. So I know Tim's heart, and we both are men of faith. I go to Bible study with Tim, and just to be in Israel with him and get to know him even more as a friend and see his commitment to the shared ideals of these 2 great Abrahamic faiths is something that makes me even think this is more special to be with him in this coalition. And then finally, many folks know that my journey to Judaism didn't start as a senator. I've been studying Torah now on and off for more than 20 years. The Jewish faith, which has been the center in many ways of some of the great Black activists in American history. If you look at most of Martin Luther King's major speeches, including his last, I've been to the mountaintop, they all are coming from the Torah, from the Old Testament. If you go where King was slain at Lorraine Motel, it's words from the Torah that are written there, the words of Joseph's brothers, "Behold, here cometh the dreamers. Let us slay him and see what becomes of the dream." And so I've been deeply influenced by the Jewish faith. I've been very blessed by that journey, and also know, as Tim does, our civil rights history, from Rabbi Yocham Prince from Newark, who spoke right before King on the March on Washington, to Abraham Joshua Heschel, to even perhaps the most profound testimony from Tim and my faith, as well as from the Jewish ideals of Hillel. If I'm not for myself, who am I? If I'm only for myself, what am I? If I'm not for myself, who will be for me? If I'm only for myself, what am I? If not now, when? But Goodman, Cheney, and Schwerner, who died together in the civil rights movement, showing that kind of commitment and the kind of radical love that is at the core of both faiths.
Mm-hmm. Thank you so much, Senator Booker. That was a wonderful summation of why this makes sense. This caucus makes so much sense now. Senator Rosen, I want to go back to you and ask, I mean, this caucus has a mission statement, right? And if so, could you share some of its key points?
Well, I will tell you that, and I'll just say one last thing is that, I'm the third Jewish woman to be in the United States Senate. So you think the first two elected Black men to the United States Senate, the third Jewish woman, and here we are making history. And, the reason that there's a mission statement is because if you don't know where you're going, how are you going to get there? So our mission statement is really, really important, because during the civil rights movement, like we all spoke about, Black and Jewish Americans came together to fight racism, anti-Semitism, hate, and bigotry. So what is this caucus going to do? We're going to show leadership by getting together with our communities, with you all here today, allies and partners around our country, our faith-based leaders and other community leaders, to talk about education, to have common conversations, to find out what we believe, the same beliefs we have, social action and social justice. My rabbi's father, blessed memory, Sidney Axelrod, marched with Martin Luther King in the 1960s. And his son, who's my rabbi, it brings a rich history to that, to my home congregation. And so we want to work to continue. This work is never done. It's going to be ongoing. This is just the beginning. We're going to keep doing it, and hopefully those will keep following us, because there's always more young people to come up that need to know what's going on, how to band together with allies and partners for social action and social justice.
So you all have spoken about the long and storied history. Senator Booker, you mentioned Rabbi Heschel. I had the opportunity to interview his daughter recently, and she talked about how her father really believed that the lives and futures of Black Americans and Jewish Americans were very closely intertwined. Can you speak to the degree of Black-Jewish cooperation in Congress, and also what each of you see in your states? What are the relationships you see in South Carolina, New Jersey, and Nevada?
Well, Tim, why don't you go first?
Sure. In South Carolina, one of the things I'm excited about is that we're one of the leading states on movements that stopped the BDS movement. Our state was the first to adopt legislation led by Alan Clements. But within that state, that we have strong, healthy relationships within the African American and Jewish communities. There was something a while back called Operation Understanding. It was at least a regional program, if not nationwide, and it brought African Americans and Jewish folks together in the 11th and 12th grade. They spent 2 years getting to understand and appreciate each other's cultures, each other's faith, and they went to Charleston. They went to Atlanta, to Birmingham, Tuskegee, and DC as a part of this program. And it's those seeds that have been sown throughout South Carolina that makes us such a strong place to see positive, healthy, encouraging relationships. It's one of the reasons why, as a senator, I sponsored the Anti-Semitism Act that was to change the definition for anti-Semitism on college campuses is because of the healthy relationship that I've watched grow over, as I said, over 40 years. And that program, Operation Understanding, is kind of the icing on the cake. It's the best way to distill what a healthy relationship looks like within South Carolina. As I said, it's a program that's been around for a long time and extends beyond the borders of South Carolina. But it's that willingness to see ourselves and our kids participate in a program of understanding and appreciating the parallel universes that exist and how much they cross over, how much cross-pollination has happened throughout history. That's probably the best example I can give on why it's so important and what South Carolina is doing about it.
Senator Rosen?
Well, I can tell you that Nevada is a diverse state. We have many communities that make up our one Nevada. And unfortunately, we've had our share of tragedies. But what I do know is this: when times are good, Nevadans come together to celebrate, because you see that, especially in the Las Vegas Strip, when people are having a fun time. And you've seen it when we've had a tragedy on that same Las Vegas Strip, when we came together as a community to overcome adversity. And this last summer, we did have a lot of protests over the police violence. And I was able to join with Black leaders in Nevada, our federal delegation, our state delegation, our governor, faith-based leaders, so important. I'm actually was a president of my synagogue in the past before I was here. And I can tell you that there's interfaith alliances where Nevada is a small state, and so we're able to know each other. So these alliances really moved us forward. And so there's broad coalitions, just ADL, AJC, all across the board. We come together, we march together, we sing together, because one thing that we know for sure, and I want to talk to Senator Scott, keeps bringing up 40 years. Well, 40, somebody wandered 40 years in the desert, then they found a home. If you're wandering of 40 years, we have found a coalition. So there you go. It took that. We'll put that in there. But we
I love that, Jacky.
That's right. Think about that. He wandered 40 years, and here we are. We found a home. And I can tell you that Black Americans are targeted for their race. Jewish Americans most targeted for their religion. Yes. And we have to stop this. And when we stand shoulder to shoulder and say enough is enough, that's when the healing and positive change begins.
And Senator Booker, what do you see in New Jersey?
Well, first of all, I'm a little upset because, and I hate to put tension between a Black senator and a Jewish senator, but you notice how she dropped that she was president, and I, of course, failed to try to get that title. So I'm a little upset that there's one president at least represented in this call of a great shul, and I had the pleasure of giving tribute to her recently, and when she was honored by her own synagogue. So, and then she fails. And the second grievance, this is the airing of the grievance section. The second grievance is she didn't mention the most important Black-Jewish bond in the entire state of Nevada, at least from my perspective, and that is that my mom lives in Nevada and is a good friend and a huge fan of her Jewish senator. So that relationship is perhaps very critical. So, but I aired my grievances. I got it off my chest. I hope you feel some good Jewish guilt there.
We noted.
But look, Jersey. My whole life story in New Jersey is about Black-Jewish relations. My family was denied housing time and time again in New Jersey when my parents were trying to move from here in DC. I was just a baby. It was 1969. And this remarkable coalition of Blacks and whites, Christians and Jews in northern New Jersey set up a sting operation to buy the house that I would eventually grow up in. In fact, the white couples kept posing as my parents. The white couple that put a bid on the house that my parents were denied. On the day of the closing, my dad and the white couple didn't show up. My dad did, and a volunteer Jewish lawyer named Marty Friedman showed up, and Marty was punched in the face by the real estate agent. A Doberman Pinscher was signaled my dad, and that's what my parents raised me to understand what leaders, and in this particular case, Jewish leaders, did for my family, the very entrance I had to my state. But it didn't stop there. You all know I was the mayor of Newark. the legendary Jewish diaspora in Newark is not just spanned throughout the globe, and great names like Philip Roth and others coming from Weequahic High School. But if you go to the Weequahic High School Alumni Association, which is predominantly Jewish, and see what they do, is they're back in Weequahic High School, which is predominantly Black, and they're serving and they're making contributions. When I was mayor of the city of Newark, tremendous Jewish engagement, philanthropy came from people who did not forget where they came from. Now as a senator, I have an entire state where I work closely with a number of Jewish organizations all across the Jewish sort of spectrum, from this great organization all the way to great Orthodox rabbis, Lubavitch rabbis, conservative Reform rabbis, who really are living the call of the Jewish faith to heal the world, to tikkun olam, who are engaged in Jewish issues but understand that their destiny is interwoven with the destiny of others. And so my whole life has been this experience over and over again, where this tie between our communities, as James Baldwin wrote about the arrest of one of his friends, if they come for you in the morning, they'll come for us at night. And this understanding that we are locked, and that hate, especially as we see rises in anti-Semitism, the hate, anti-Semitism, racism, they're all fruit of the same poisonous tree, and we all have an obligation to do something about it. And the last thing I'll say, which I'm really proud of, in many ways, Blacks and Jews have been a very strong conscience of this entire country, helping this nation to live up to its democratic ideals by being challenged by those who are often marginalized or excluded. We've tried, our communities have a history of working to make this country see itself, its truth, its beauty, its wonder. And I'm just excited to be in partnership with this coalition that you see before you, from different political perspectives and different faiths and different races, that we can do our best to make America live up to its promise of a multicultural, inclusive democracy. And that song sung during the high holiday, Ki beiti beit tefillah l'chol amin, may my house be a house of prayer for many nations. That is a Jewish ideal, but it's also a very American ideal.
Mm-hmm. So we are at a point, you've all mentioned it, we're at a point in our nation's history when Black and Jewish communities both face hate, they both face bigotry, and many are trying to figure out how to unite around those issues that affect each other's survival. And I'm curious what your thoughts are. What can leaders in the Jewish community do to help raise up and address key concerns for the Black community? And likewise, what is the role of the Black community in combating anti-Semitism?
I'll start with the role of the Black community in confronting anti-Semitism. One of the things you have to do is be willing to speak out. I mean, as Jacky was talking about earlier, the African-American community is the largest group of people violated by hatred from a racial perspective, and our Jewish brothers and sisters from religion. The Black community should be as outspoken against hate in the Jewish community as anybody else. Having felt the sting and the dehumanization of that hatred, we should speak. And one of the things that I've tried to do, and I see happening as well, is when we see hatred and attacks on our Jewish brothers and sisters, whether that's in New York recently, we should speak out. And so I've been tweeting out about that hatred. When we see it in the Middle East against Israel, we should speak out and be loud and clear about our stand with our Jewish brothers and sisters across the globe. And that is one of the most important things that we can do. I partnered with a guy named Norm Brownstein and Mark Rowan on the Anti-Semitism Act. I looked for ways to work with my state legislator back at home on the BDS movement. We've seen that if you just take that stand, others will follow. And this is a really important place for us to take a stand. It is not enough to know it's wrong. If you know it's wrong, you must stand up and be counted. In Proverbs 31, it says, stand up for those who can't stand for themselves. And as national leaders, we bear the responsibility, the burden, and the privilege of standing in the gap for so many Americans who feel concerned about their personal and physical safety. We can do something about that with our voices and with the legislation that we pass. we should do both, and I will continue to do so.
I guess I would add is that some of the things that that everyone's talked about are faith-based communities, are the targeting of hatred, how we've had to take care of each other, stand up for each other. When we know something is wrong, it is our obligation to speak up and stand up and speak out. And that by doing so, we're showing real leadership, because that's what real leaders do. It isn't always what's popular. We can't legislate everything, but what we can do is set an example through our actions, not just our words, but through our actions. That's what this does. We have, however, done one thing with our actions to help places like the Mother Emanuel Church or the Tree of Life Synagogue, who were vandalized, so many cemeteries, churches, and synagogues, of course, across the country. We have hardened and funded through Homeland Security that nonprofit security grant. So there are sometimes things we can legislate. That gives money for nonprofits, religious institutions, communities of faith, to be sure that they have the wherewithal to protect themselves. Why do we do it? Because we know that if you save one life, it's as good as saving every life. And we know if you change a life, it's the same thing. So what we have to do is band together, talk to each other, set an example for others to follow, bring them along. And that's how this continues and grows and bears positive fruit, bears great fruit, not poison fruit of hate, but bears true sweet fruit.
And Jacky, one of the things that we could do before the great Cory Booker talks to us, I think one of the things we could do is to use the African American National Museum and the Holocaust Museum as a way to bring folks together from our communities. This would be one of the projects that we could champion. I serve on the council at the Holocaust Museum, and I will tell you that I have learned so much in so little time in this last 18 months since I've been on the council. And I will say that this is a golden opportunity for young kids across the country to have an operation understanding, to bring African American and Jewish kids, let's say kids, high school and college students, through the two museums. It would be a wonderful experience, and the three of us or the four of us could have an opportunity to perhaps have them over at the CBC, since we're opening back up, and have a conversation and a dialogue about what we have in common. I think what's become popular in America today is to look for the fissures that separate and the stress fractures below the surface, as opposed to the common history that literally spans time. To the extent that we understand and appreciate that golden opportunity, we'll probably see people leaning in and standing in a defensive posture for folks who've been in similar situations. That would be a powerful message spoken to all of this nation.
Well, I'm on the Holocaust Council with you, and I'm co-chair and co-founder of the first ever bipartisan task force that you're part of to combat anti-Semitism. James Langford and I have been talking about having a field trip to the Holocaust Museum. I think we should partner them together. It is a terrific idea, because every human being, I believe, is at its best when they have something to build and work towards. Not something to tear down, but something to look towards. And looking towards, we're going to look over to Senator Booker, who I know always has the inspirational message that something we work towards. I think it is when we're at our very best, and we have a goal and we're reaching out with someone's hand to do something good. It's when we're all at our best.
And Senator Booker, we will give you the last word on this.
Well, I'm going to say a couple things. One is, I think both of the senators have said rightfully that we have a job to do, all of us. So whether it's combating BDS, I'm proud of the work that I've done with my colleagues on that, to getting resources to help synagogues have money for protection. King said it very clearly: I can't legislate you to love me, but I can pass legislation to stop you from lynching me. I can't legislate to change someone's heart, but I can legislate to restrain the heartless. And so we actually have a job to do, and the three of us, I think, along with others, always keeping these issues in focus. That's our job. But all of us are leaders. And I think both of my colleagues said it right. If you listen to the two speeches of Rabbi Prince, who spoke before King, and then King, there is this call to what Tim talked about, is not being silent. Now, let me make this, because this is not all cheers and a real friendship. And Tim and I, who are working now on police reform legislation, real friendship is not telling people what they want to hear, sometimes being honest and candid with them. And so I'll just say this, and I don't know if Tim, I'll get a hallelujah or amen, but you and I have been in many Black churches where some non-Black politician comes in and says a lot of things about racism and criminal justice reform. And I often just sit there and say, what are they saying in front of the white churches? Are they bringing up these same issues? It is not enough for me to stand up in front of a synagogue and talk about anti-Semitism. What needs to happen, and this is where I see Tim doing this consistently, and Jacky, as a friend I know, does this consistently in her state. We need people to not speak where it's comfortable and convenient, but we need folks who are speaking up when it's not, when it actually is a risk. And this is where we are in America right now, I think, because we need more people that are willing to go against the grain. It's very easy right now. There's manufactured outrage all across the political spectrum. There is people that want to demonize others, otherize others. I think the mission and this is where I feel a spiritual bond with Jacky and Tim, is that our mission is to reduce the otherness and expand the usness, is to try to deepen those coalitions. I'm very conscious of the fact there has never been a period where Blacks and Jews were not working together in America. People want to talk about the heyday. There's always been, they don't get the attention. What gets the attention is the rifts and the conflicts and that. And so what I hope we can use our platform as people that have maybe a modicum more notoriety is not just for the legislative stuff, but the stuff my two colleagues were just talking about how do we do the things to help folk in our communities become more aware, deepen empathy, expand love, and love necessitates knowledge. So I'm just really grateful for my friends. And I know we have a lot of challenges, but as they say, Bezrat Hashem, we will be successful in expanding the light and the love and the connection in both of our communities. And as often has been the case with Blacks and Jews who are willing to open their hearts to be champions of these ideals, it really helps to ignite that and even beyond our own communities.
Mm-hmm. Well put. Senator Rosen, Senator Booker, Senator Scott, thank you for assembling this historic Senate Caucus on Black-Jewish relations, and thank you for sharing the news of it on the Virtual Global Forum stage. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
Thanks for having us. Have a good one.
Thank you.